Here is this Honda TRX 300. It's about a 94. And what we're doing here, a couple months ago I did a carb clean on it. And well, we got a couple parts for our rear axle here because there was a cap missing on it over here. So, now what it's doing is these brakes, they're sticking. It's causing, like, you can't even turn over the rear axle. Because I'm like, this engine has no power. Well, we figured out all these brakes it's dragging and that's what's keeping it from having any power. So we gotta get this apart. So I'm gonna start by taking this cover off underneath here. I already got the wheel off. The engine can barely overpower the sticking of that brake. Okay, what I'm doing now is I'm getting these cables here that hold your brake on, that engage your brake. Taking them cables loose, so I have movement of the lever here that actuates the brakes. Now we're getting all these bolts here on this cover loosened up. Okay, in order to get this off, we're going to have to take these loose. So, you're going to need a big wrench. This is 1 5/8". These are part of that big cheap set that my dad had. And you loosen up the jam nut. Come here to the inside one. And loosen it up. These ain't on here too tight, so you might be able to do it with a really big adjustable wrench if you don't have big enough wrenches. I got locked on there. There we go. Now that brake dust that you get out of there, don't blow that around because that can have asbestos in it. So you want to suck that up with a shop vac or wipe it up with a wet rag. It's not supposed to have it in it anymore, but it can. Well, this has got to come off. So you take the cotter pin out, take off your castle nut and the washer that's behind it there. And this is splined on here, and luckily it's not rusted to it, so it comes off real nice. And we can slide our nuts off. Make sure you know what order those came off in. Then for your cover and your spacer, and there's a gasket here and more brake dust. Always good to get a parts breakdown. A good place to get them from, go to Babbitts.com. They're a big OEM parts seller, but they have really good breakdowns of everything on there for basically any recreational vehicle ever made. We're getting this drum off here now, and those pads are seized in there. And after prying on it with some pry bars, the pads were coming with it. So we're taking the punch here and hitting them pads back while we pry it off to get it to come. Like I figured, the pads are shot. Well, this is how the brakes actually do work on here. There's that piece right there that just spreads them apart, and they grip inside the drum. Now we have to get what's left of these old pads off here, and you don't actually have to take this loose. They just rest against there. You just get these 2 springs in here loose, and they'll come off. Well, took and sucked this all out with a shop vac good. Now what I'm doing is taking, you want to clean up the surfaces that it rubs along. On a vehicle, there'd be spots up against the backing plate here where it'd rub against that you'd want to clean. But on this, they don't do that. So I'm just taking on here. You could use a sandpaper or something. I'm just using a nice smooth file. You just clean up that surface there. You want to make sure you get that in there cleaned up too. Well, you want to make sure you clean up your hands a bit with maybe some gas or mineral spirits. You don't want to have them covered in oily junk. And with your new pads, You really don't want to touch the face of that any more than you have to. You should clean it off with brake clean once you're done before you put your drum back on, but I don't have any of that here, so I'm just going to try to keep from touching it and clean up my hands good. And for a four-wheeler, it really won't make any difference, but for a vehicle, you want to make sure you have some brake clean to clean that up with. So, these ones actually don't come with new springs, so you have to reuse the old ones, so you just reinstall them on there the exact same way you took them off. Well, the sides with the curve on them, they go over here to this side. And this one will go over here on the bottom. And what works really well, the spring on this back side here, put that on first before you put it on, because you can just pry these around there and get them on, and then this spring's a lot easier to get on. It's a good idea, take a little bit of anti-seize, and on this here where they rub, and on the bottom of that, and over here where they rub. Put some of that in there just a bit. You want to use anti-seize and not something else, because other stuff can splatter. So, grab our pads here. Get one side on. We get the other side pried in. These go around here. Get that so they come together, and you put your other spring on. Now, of course, we'll use the vice grips. Get her on there good and tight. And stretch her on. Check, make sure it works properly. Everything's free and moving well. So, what I'm going to do now is, the inside of this drum where they rub, it's a little gunked up. So I'm going to take a little bit of sandpaper and clean that out a bit. Well, now that I got the inside of that cleaned out a bit, I'm going to take, and down there on them splines, I'm going to put a little bit of ATF on there. Just because ATF is basically like anti-seize. It does just about the same thing. It'll keep it from getting stuck on there if you ever have to take it off again. Just don't get too much. There's this ring here. Goes around this outer lip on your drum. If you can get it off while it's still in the four-wheeler when you're taking it apart, it'll make that drum come off of there real nice. But usually they get so rusted in there you can't get them out. This one, I had to hammer and chisel it out, so now I'm going to clean it up with some emery cloth and clean up inside this groove here with a wire brush so that I should be able to slide that drum on there, and then I'll get the ring in there when it's on. Oh, I got my drum here with that ring removed. And it'll slide over the pads, but you have to get that ring back in there, which is what the fun part is. Well, I'll just get her all put back together the way she came apart now. Then we'll go for a test ride. Well, we got her